Hello, and welcome to Missy's Imaginings. Here are the pieces that are all cut out, and I've kind of done the prep work on the pieces that we need to do. So we'll take a look at each one and what kind of prep work needs to be done before we assemble. So we'll start with the center front, and this is the long one. What I've done is some stay stitching with a slightly larger stitch than my regular sewing stitch, and I've gone down the side seams on both sides. Then on the side front, I've kind of done the same thing on the side that is the front bust side that attaches to the center. And what this will do is it gives a little bit of a firmer sewing line, so that when you go to put these curves together, it will be easier to make them fit and go around that sewing line, because this has such a definite curve where this is just a little more sloped. But we want to be able to fit this edge to this edge, and this stay stitching seam really does help with that. So I've got the stay stitching done. I've done the same thing on the facing pieces for the side, front, and the front. So I've done the exact same stay stitching on those pieces. Then on the center back seam, I adjusted my serger or overlock machine to a single needle. Because this fabric is very light and silky, I didn't want the normal 1/4 inch depth of a serger or overlock. I just wanted the little skinny, kind of like a rolled edge. So what I did is I changed the settings to the rolled edge settings with just one needle, but I did not increase the stitch length because I don't want to bunch up those stitches and make them really close together, because that's the stitch length. You're still looking on a serger, the stitch length is the length of the stitch by the needle. And so when you make that really small and it makes it, really tiny, it adds a lot more looping going like this, so you get more bulk. So I did not do that. I just kept the stitch length where it normally is, but that way I have a tiny little overlock on the edge. The reason for this is it will have the facing attached, but on the center back, that's where I'm going to kind of put the dress together. I don't want raw edges on the lower part of the fabric. So I've went ahead and did the overlock stitch there. I also overlocked the center back on the back flounce, which is this edge here, the exact same way. Then I went ahead and did 2 stitches of basting length stitch across the top, because this edge is going to be gathered to match this edge. So I'm going to gather this, match it to this, and it'll be sewn on the bottom here. Then we have the side front flounce, and so that has, I went ahead and did the same overlock on the top just so that would not be raw fabric, and then I did the 2 lines of basting stitch. This is going to be gathered together as tight as it possibly can, because I don't want any length. I want this to be a point at the top. So this will be gathered as tightly as possible and then tied so that it will just be a triangle, not a triangle with a cut off top. But I didn't want raw fabric at the top, so I went ahead and did the overlock at the very top of that. Then that will be gathered. Then this will be sewn to the bottom edge of the front piece here on each side, and then I will do the overlock once this is put together, and then this will be attached, and then I will overlock the whole side seam and do the other side. So once this is on, I'll overlock this part, and then when I attach the side front, it will come down this side of the flounce, and then I'll overlock the entire edge there so that it will have a nice finished edge. Of course, that'll be done on both sides. So that's what needs to happen there. And then I do have some straps, so I will put these together at the shoulder seam on the front of the dress and then the front of the lining. And I'm thinking what I want to do is then it will be, once it's put on, and this is, the side fronts are attached to the front, and these are on the shoulders, I'm going to fit it on the doll so I know exactly where the bottom is going to attach to the back. So we'll kind of go over a little bit more when we get closer, but for now it's just going to be the top shoulder will be attached to the front on the actual dress and on the lining. So I think that's what we're going to do first, is get these flounces gathered and attached, put this to the shoulder seams, then we'll go ahead and put the front to the side front, and then we'll kind of come back and take a look at how we get the facing in before we do the side seams and the back. Here is the center front with the straps on at the shoulders, and both of the flounces on each side gathered to as tight of a point as I could get. And then the center back pieces have their, there we go, we'll turn on the light too, there we go, maybe that's a little better. So we put the flounce on the center back pieces, and that's how they look once they're done. And then I went ahead and did the straps on the front facing as well. So my next step is going to be to assemble the side front to the front on each side. So I'm going to start at the top and then sew down, kind of swiveling my fabrics as I go through the needle, kind of fooling my machine to thinking I'm sewing a straight line. And then I'll come all the way down to the front, and then this side piece will then angle onto the other side, the raw side of the little inset flounce or gusset there. So then that will come down to the bottom, and then that will put the sides to the front. So that will be my next step, to do that on both of the sides of the center front of the dress as well as the facing. But I'm not going to be using the center back yet. That will come into play once we're ready to connect the straps. So here's the first fitting onto the doll, and as you can see, if the curves look all right, here's what the hem will look like. So we've got the little gussets coming in there, and then on the sides I went ahead and I just pinned the side seams so I would have an accurate showing of what the seam allowance would be. So I know where I want to place the back strap onto the back pieces. And so here, by pinning it in and kind of centering it where I want it, it looks like the edge of the finished strap is going to be about a 1/2 inch from the side seam. So that gives me a placement on either side, so I know that the finished edge will be a 1/2 inch from that side seam. So it gives me placement for my straps, so I know where those need to go. So that's what I needed to place, and now we're on to our next steps. My next step is going to be to add the center back pieces to the side seams on both sides of the dress, as well as both sides of the lining. I'll finish the hem edge of the lining or the facing. Then I'm going, with right sides together, I'm going to sew up the center back on each side, as well as the neckline, and then the arm. I'm only going to go to where the bust line comes down to probably about the side seam, because I want to leave the back part open so that I can insert the strap into the back seam so that it will be nice and finished, rather than have my strap just attached to the back. I want it to be inside that seam. So I'm not going to do the entire armhole. I'm only going to go to that side seam and leave the back open. Then that can be inset, and then I'll finish stitching up the back, so the top of the back. So that's my next steps, and then we'll kind of almost be ready to do our finishing work. And now we have everything kind of pressed into place. So all the seams are kind of pressed down, and the neckline's all ready. The straps are sewn in. The back has its finished edge here. So the next step is to take the back seam with right sides together, and we'll sew from the hem up into the back, or I might just start up at the top and match my seams here at the top, and then I'm going to start sewing the back together inside, up inside the lining a little bit, so that when it's open from the outside you won't see any of these edges. So I'll pull the lining away and line up my seam allowance and start from up inside the facing, and then sew down to the hem, and then I'll just need to hem the dress and put my snaps on, and the dress should be finished. I thought about some embellishments, so I might go ahead and do that as well, and but that's putting it together, and so I'll go ahead and do the last steps, see if I want to put any embellishments on, and then we'll put it on the doll and see how it looks. And here is the finished dress. I just have one more snap I need to add, but I thought, well, we'll go ahead and show what it turned out like. So here's the back and how the straps work, and if we can get the hair out of the way here. So I need to add, there we go, this snap, and then here's the little gems we put on the bottom. Hopefully that will, here we'll maybe go like this to point at, help it focus. So we put little embellishments here, 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 just on all the seams where it meets the little ruffle. And then up at the top, I went ahead and put, let's see, it doesn't really want to focus very well, but there's gems up here along the neckline. And when I made the pattern, I used the Hua Rong basic set, and I did not add enough to the seam allowances, and so it ended up, it fit her, but it couldn't close all the way over the bum in the back. And I could get the top snap done in the back, but not around the bum. And but it does fit the Island doll Ada, and she has more of an average third scale figure, whereas the Hua Rong is a lot curvier. She does have a bigger waist, much bigger hips, although the bust is kind of the same. And then her legs are a lot bigger than this doll. So, but the dress does fit this doll. I think if I were to make it again, I would add some length to the pieces to have it kind of drape onto the floor a little bit more. And then I might even make this flounce in the back more full, so that it would have more ruffly parts there. I don't think I'd add more fullness to these pieces, because if you add length, that's also going to add more flare at the bottom because it's cut at a triangle. But I think on these, I would keep this one straight, and then this one, and then just like cut in the center and spread it out so that you'd get more ruffle up here at the top. But I like how it turned out, and that's what it looks like. So there we go. So now you know how I put this together and what the finished result will look like. So there you go. Happy sewing, and I'll see you next time. Bye.